get that figured out. All right, take it away, James.
All right, well, thank you everybody for attending today. Darren has a couple comments before we go into the approval of meeting 5 summary notes.
James, it was actually Jim Edwards that wanted to make a comment.
Okay, all right, Jim, go ahead.
Thank you. I received just this morning a copy of 2 extensive written comments on the vision plan that were submitted to the city staff months ago. And I have submitted 4 extensive comments, none of which have been distributed to the working group as provided in the working group meeting guidelines number 14. Number 14 states that any written comments received from the public by staff will be provided to all the members. I moved that the process of approval of the draft vision plan by the working group be delayed while all written comments are provided to the members. Furthermore, after such information is provided to the working group members, I move that a work session in person of 3 to 4 hours be scheduled to work through the vision plan.
All right, Jim, is that all the comments? Sorry. Jim, are those all your comments?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, Darren, good points on everybody getting all the comments that are out there. Do we want to move forward and approve summary notes and then discuss, or do we want to discuss now?
Well, I guess the group needs to decide, but yeah. So the full text of the comments, apologize, were not provided, but the summary of the comments is in that comment matrix at the end of the a meeting packet. I believe there were can't remember how many pages of comments, but yeah. Yeah, so staff essentially summarized the comments into more digestible points and then make responses to them. So hopefully everyone got a chance to at least look at the comment matrix.
Okay, so the comments that are summarized include these comments that Jim is talking about.
That is correct. Well, I believe so. I'm not sure exactly which comments Jim is referring to, but any comments we received during and after the survey in December, January are in this comment matrix.
Could you
Okay.
explain where that is? Could you pull that up and show it to us?
Yeah, it's the last I don't know, handful, 20 pages of the meeting packet, but I can share my screen here. Just give me a second. Everybody see that?
It's pretty small.
All right, I'll see what I can do here.
This is the same packet that we have in the agenda, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it starts on page 125 of the agenda packet that was sent out to the group last Thursday. So there's the, hope you can see that. But yeah.
So could I ask a question, Chair? James?
Yes, yes, not a
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you. So my question, I guess, would be, in the interest of time, to make sure that the question Jim has raised gets addressed, but maybe we don't tease it all out in this meeting, because I think this might take a while, but so the comments that he's looking for, Jim, this comment that you're referring to that you just got today, is that different than what we got in the packet then?
Yes. They're the original comments from Russ Axelrod, actually. But and my comments were extensive. They weren't just not a one line. So I think we should see the original comments submitted to the staff.
Well, I think we could get access to them without delaying this process, possibly, because what it sounds like is staff has distilled the spirit of the comment into something that's more digestible for the process. And that's what we've been receiving, sounds like, from Darren, what he just said. So I would prefer to move forward with this particular agenda in the interest of time and everyone else who's joined this meeting, and deal with this concern maybe separately. But that's just my suggestion. Anybody else is welcome to contribute their own. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree to move ahead on this agenda that we have in front of us today. If anybody has objections, please let me know. Okay, well, then I'll move to item number 2, approval of meeting 5 summary notes. I would need a motion and a second on that, if there's no
So
questions.
moved. I move
Thank
to
you.
approve the meeting notes.
And I will second.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Can I ask if there's any nays? Any nays? Please say nay now. Any,
Well, I have one comment.
oh, no, we're just voting yay or nay or abstain on the minutes.
Abstain.
Okay. And then James can open it up for comment.
Okay, so we have approval of the meeting 5 summary notes. And was that Jim that had a comment?
Yes.
All right,
On
comment
on
on
item
the
number
meeting notes?
on item number 3 on the meeting notes, there was the meeting notes say that members touched on the varying levels of support for adoptive reuse of historic structures. And that seems to be a very brief description of the conversation that was had.
Okay, but it's an accurate description, and the transcript was recorded on meeting number 5. Do we have any other comments on the meeting notes? No? Okay. All right, then I'll close the comments and we'll move to item number 3, this discussion, final comments on policy and regulation memo. Darren, do you want to lead that, or is that just open to
Sure.
comments?
Sure, sorry. Yeah, Adrian, were you gonna take this one?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My apologies. Yeah, at the last working group meeting, we presented the policy and regulatory memo, and also provided that as a part of the previous meeting packet. We had opened that document up for further comment from the project working group through to the end of last month. And Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we got any additional comments on that memo from the group. So
That is correct.
Great. So just wanted to give one last opportunity for folks that may have reviewed that. If there's any additional comments we need to make, it ultimately that memo will become an appendix to the final report for the vision plan. So that's sort of its intent. And James, if there's no other comments, I think we can hand back to you.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. If there are no other comments, let's move on to discussion comments on item number 4, the transportation memo.
Yeah, that one's me again. So this item, similar to the policy and regulatory memo, the consulting team's also been working on 2 other policy memos. One is related to the transportation needs or requirements of the waterfront site. So given the vision plan, what does that mean in terms of updating city policy, and particularly the transportation system plan, to make it consistent with the outlined vision? We provided a written document in the meeting packet. I'm going to go through that today in a slide format. And then I think another agenda item is the other and final sort of policy piece that Leyland Consulting has been working on, which is around the implementation and financing. So those are the 3 sort of additional policy documents that will be added to as appendices to the vision plan to outline the next steps for what's needed post vision plan to make this sort of city policy and how it moves forward in the future. So with that, I will share my screen here. Okay, and hopefully you are seeing the large version of that. Let me just try that again. Sorry.
Adrian, you probably want to show the presentation.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to get there.
Okay.
All right, almost there. All right, so hopefully that is now coming up on the screen. Give me a yell if it's not.
Looks good.
Yeah, so with this, with the vision plan, there's a few needs in terms of transportation policy to incorporate the vision plan into the transportation policies of the city. How that is typically done is through the transportation system plan, which is a component, the transportation component essentially of the local or the city's comprehensive plan. What a TSP does is it outlines, the projects, programs, and policies needed for the next 20 years in the city. And the last update of the city's transportation system plan was in 2016. So it is a little bit old. ODOT typically recommends updating these every 7 or so years. So it's a little bit out of date. And there are sort of 2 ways that the transportation system plan gets updated. One can be a major update, which is a whole review of the city's transportation needs to meet new sort of trends in growth and development. And then there are also minor updates that can happen. And so for those that were involved in the Oregon 43 or the Willamette Falls Drive concept plans previously, those are some minor updates or addendums to the city's transportation system plan. So essentially, the transportation system plan will likely need to be updated here in the future. Again, one, because it's starting to get out of date, but two, there's a couple of different initiatives, including our Waterfront vision plan and the Vision 43 project, as well as several other changes that are occurring throughout the city that will need to be incorporated into a comprehensive plan and then therefore into the transportation system plan at some point. And then the second, the other reason for the transportation system plan needing to be updated is to bring it into compliance with updated state transportation planning rules. And those are rules that are established as part of the DLCD's process. And in particular, there are some updates from DLCD's CFEC rulemaking, and we'll talk about this in more detail here in a minute. But essentially what we're driving at here is the Waterfront vision plan will need to be included in the city's consideration in its update to the transportation system plan. And ultimately, we want to decide what is the best process forward for incorporating that. And there's a number of considerations here. One is that part of the climate-friendly and equity communities rulemaking, we'll talk more specifically about what this particular rulemaking means for the waterfront and how we may a couple of different directions we can go based on that rulemaking of how we incorporate it into policy. So essentially, the CFEC rules came about as part of DLCD's reaction to our own Governor Brown's executive order that directed state agencies to meet Oregon's climate and pollution reduction targets. And the CFEC rules updated the transportation planning rule in 2022. And what those updates require is that jurisdictions in a metro area with populations greater than 5,000 designate what's called climate-friendly areas, so CFAs. And those CFAs are subject to different transportation requirements that are more in line with mixed use and multimodal areas within those metro areas. So let's dive in a little bit more about what is a climate-friendly area. So a CFA is generally a mixed-use area where residents, workers, and visitors can meet most of their daily needs without having to rely on a vehicle. In the Portland metro region, the 2040 regional and town centers that Metro defines serve as those CFAs. And currently, those metro designations include the Bolton and Willamette neighborhoods adjacent, which are designated by Metro as town centers. So those centers will need to go essentially through this process. And our decision is whether the waterfront should join them in terms of being designated as a CFA. The vision plan, the waterfront vision plan, definitely aligns with Metro's description of those 2040 centers and also with the description of what a CFA is that we just walked through. And in the transportation planning rules, it states that as cities adopt those CFA boundaries and appropriate land use designations, those updates were outlined in the updates to the transportation planning rule as those designations need to be completed by the end of 2025, but left it open that there's opportunities to move that out further potentially to as far as 2029. So is potentially a little bit of time to think about the right strategy for moving this forward as well. What are the benefits of designating this as a CFA rather than just like thinking of it as a general area? The town centre designation would definitely elevate the waterfront at the regional table, similar to the Bolton and Willamette neighbourhoods, and potentially provide it better access to regional funding that's really focused in on those regional and town centres. And then similarly, we know there's a lot of changes happening with state and federal funding, but generally, we anticipate that there will be support, ongoing support for those sort of CFEC implementation and climate action, and that potentially makes the waterfront and the Willamette and Bolton neighbourhoods more competitive for federal and state discretionary grants to support some of the things that we're talking about in the waterfront. So there are some benefits to going that direction. I won't dwell on this slide too much, but for those transportation wonks that want to know what that means in terms of an analysis, there are some different transportation analysis requirements for climate-friendly areas that, as I said before, are more in line with the multimodal transportation needs of those areas. But I will also mention that because the waterfront is located right next to I-205 and the Oregon 43 ramp intersections, there's still a need to look at the potential impacts on highway operations, especially from changes to the land use in the waterfront that would be occurring as part of the vision plan. When this should be designated is a sort of an open question, and again, I sort of refer back that there's potentially some flexibility in this. The CFEC rulemaking and the CFAs are all a fairly new process, even for Metro and ODOT and other agencies, and so I think our next steps would be to make sure that we're meeting with those agencies and determining what is the appropriate timeline and the appropriate process for this. But essentially, there's a few different ways through this process. If the Willamette and Bolton neighbourhoods are on track to meet their TPR requirements by the end of 2025, then potentially the city could include the waterfront in the same package for that adoption. But we would need to understand from Metro and ODOT whether what level of analysis and is the level of analysis that's being conducted as part of the vision plan an appropriate level of detail. So that probably that item, that method is probably the least likely. The other options are for Metro is actually looking to update its future vision and growth concept plan, and that could offer us a really good chance to include the waterfront as part of the considerations of it as a town centre. And there's the potential that there's some supporting technical analysis that can go sort of hand in glove with that process that would help us meet the TPR requirements for the waterfront. And then lastly, the other option is looking at adopting the waterfront boundaries into the next comp plan update and pursuing that CFA designation at sort of the most opportune time based on the timing of those updates, as well as any sort of city and regional schedules related to that. So what does this all mean? I think certainly we believe that the CFA designation provides a good opportunity for the waterfront to leverage potentially additional funding and also help the city utilize a more appropriate analysis, transportation analysis technique for this area. And our next steps would be to meet with ODOT and Metro to understand what's probably the most effective implementation pathway and timeline, and then understand what the additional transportation analysis needs would be or when the time comes that this area is incorporated into the comp plan. So that's kind of where we're at. Really, we're just wanted to use this time on the agenda to get initial thoughts on what's been presented so far, knowing that there's still there's still work to do in terms of creating the actual pathways for once this area is incorporated into the comp plan. There is still time through that process to be able to pivot and adjust as needed. But these are our sort of initial thoughts on the transportation requirements of the project.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
James,
Guess one of the comments I might. Go ahead.
James, I was going to say you might not be able to see. There's
Yeah.
several people with their hands raised.
Okay.
You want me to call on them?
Yep. Yes, please. That was going to be my next thing, was comments.
Okay. All right. Jeff, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, so it's really more of a question. Are you thinking of the CFA requirements being applied to the entire waterfront district and all that entails, or would there be pros or cons to saying it's for the historic district and the heritage district, but not the pond district? Is there room to choose what works and not do whatever doesn't work?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and yes, I think there is definitely room for that, and that would actually be part of the sort of boundary setting process. Is to understand, where are the most appropriate locations within the sub district, if you like, within the waterfront, where that designation that meets that CFA definition really applies, versus are there parts of it that don't apply, which there could well be.
Thank you.
And Greg, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just curious if there are any disadvantages to pursuing a CFA designation.
I probably say the disadvantages potentially would just be around the additional process and need in terms of like how this incorporates into the comp plan. And I think if this was the only CFA being considered, this would be a more challenging process. But the Metro already has designations of Bolton and Willamette, and I think there's a really good opportunity to sort of piggyback off the back of those, or along with those areas. So yeah, I don't know that there's any clear disadvantages. We don't think that this triggers a more onerous transportation analysis process, but that would be one of the things we would want to ask with ODOT and Metro going forward.
Patrick?
Just a quick clarification question. So who would be the primary contact having this discussions with ODOT?
We would certainly like to do a preliminary investigation of this as part of this process. So with Darren and staff's help, just having those initial conversations to again just vet our understanding and any of those other triggers, and then ultimately that would then become part of the comp plan updates and TSP processes that would happen inevitably in the future.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, it would be you and your team and someone from the city together in this? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then any adoption of the town center boundary, Patrick, requires city council to make that decision. So it ultimately goes through a legislative process. And then Bob, did you have a question?
I did. I'm not sure when's the appropriate time to discuss this, and I'm glad you asked. It was in reference to my concerns I expressed to you yesterday about the 3 separate districts.
Okay, yeah, so we'll get to that agenda item here shortly.
Okay.
Okay, James, that was all the questions from the group. So you had a question, I believe, comment?
Yeah, so my comment was, kind of the same as the last one, but this won't impact the waterfront vision plan because it's a separate thing that's happening for three different, or potentially three different areas in the city, correct?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
So I guess my question is, this won't impact what we're working on the waterfront vision plan currently, because it is more of a overreaching or a broader spectrum of what the city is already doing with Bolton and Willamette.
Yeah, that's correct. And also, yeah, as we've sort of alluded to, there would be a separate boundary setting exercise that would happen to define the specific boundaries of the CFA, which could be a subset of the waterfront area collectively. So no, it doesn't impact the work that we're doing currently on the vision plan. No.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And if there's no other comments, we could move on to number 5, which is discussion comments on the implementation and finance memo. And I think that's Chris, correct?
Correct.
That's
Myself
actually,
and
yeah.
Jennifer is going to do actually lead
Okay.
the presentation.
Okay, well, thank you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yes, I will share my screen. Sorry, it is having a hard time figuring out what screen it's trying to share. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the implementation and financing plan. So basically, what is needed to make sure that the vision plan becomes a reality. It's the roadmap of actions to move the vision plan forward, and is the fulfillment of the years of effort that you have been putting into this. And our focus for this implementation plan was to understand what the city's role is in catalyzing development, because most of this area, as you know, is privately owned land. So, you know, there's some questions of what can the city do. Actually, here we go. Some of the considerations for the city is that the city is a catalyst for private development. They're the holder of the vision through this vision plan, and they can act as a convener and leader of all of the private stakeholders that are involved in in making this vision a reality. TIF is tax increment financing is a really important tool that the city can use to unlock those development possibilities and support public interest by creating public spaces and leveraging TIF funding for community benefits. The city can also form strengthened partnerships and coordinate with landowners and other stakeholders in that role as a convener. The city's role is generally to use its regulatory controls, so that's zoning, land use, infrastructure, as well as its assets as a public entity, which is things like TIF financing, to encourage coordination. The vision plan lays out that unified vision, and then the city also has control over entitlements and public infrastructure, and can kind of step into that leadership void. You know, there's a lot of parties at the table, and there's not one clear person or entity really leading this coordination effort, and that is the city's role as convener. And of course, those key partners include all the property owners, PGE, Willamette Falls Trust, Belgravia, ODOT, etc. We've come up with a list of these organizational actions, and these are mostly led by the city, but some, as we'll discuss, are led by the development partners. But this is the framework for the more specific actions that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So the first action is adopting the waterfront vision plan. This can happen as soon as possible. It's led by the city of West Linn. We're all familiar with it. And then the city can initiate formal collaboration with those private landowners and other partners who are really key to the success of the build out of the waterfront. To formalize those partnerships, the city can work with those partners on a detailed planning process and create MOUs, or memorandums of understanding. So basically non-binding agreements that put all of the goals and roles and responsibilities into writing. And then from there, the city can negotiate development agreements with key partners as development is going to start. And those development agreements are where the city can say, okay, to make sure your development happens, we can invest in this infrastructure. And if we invest in this infrastructure, you have to provide, the development aligned with the vision plan. And then the city will work on the what we're calling the horizontal infrastructure construction, so roads, utilities, trails, and those development partners can work on that vertical development, which is the structures. The city should be opportunity driven when it comes to public infrastructure investment and investment using TIF dollars. The capital investments should leverage the partnerships that the city has formed with the landowners and developers. It should be used to implement those vision plan projects. The vision plan is really the guiding light for this whole project. So, making sure that the infrastructure investments align with those key projects. We also outlined some additional projects the city could consider, such as establishing a Main Street style street pattern, a continuous low-end connector road, or remediating and restoring holding ponds and wetlands. Those are not specifically named in the vision plan, but could be something that the city wants to support this plan. Everyone likes an early win, so we've outlined some actions that the city could take pretty quickly within the next few years to generate momentum and a sense of place. The idea behind creating a sense of place is so that the people in the community can see themselves interacting more with the waterfront, can understand it as public space and as important to the city's identity. So the first action is to program interim gathering spaces or a plaza on the site directly adjacent to the city hall. Coordination would need to be done with property owners. Funding for this could come from the Parks Fund. And these amenities could include programming like farmers markets or summer concerts, as well as public plaza type elements like planters, lighting, seating, anything that really makes the people in the community understand that this is a space for them to be. And then the second early win would be improving the West Linn public fishing dock. Again, this could be done with Parks Fund dollars, and it would help improve access and quality of the existing dock and help build that momentum and get people to really relate to the waterfront. Getting ready is the category of actions that are going to be necessary for the big development that we've discussed in the vision plan to come to life. So these are things like revisions to zoning, infrastructure planning. The first kind of ongoing part of this is engaging with West Linn residents and other public stakeholders. That's going to be constant throughout the implementation of the vision plan. Again, next, entering into MOUs with the property owners. This is a key step to kind of bring everybody on board, really formalize the coordination that the city is already doing. The city should lead on strengthened partnership and coordination with these property owners, as well as active stakeholders on the site. More getting ready actions include engaging partners in detailed master planning of the site. So once those partnerships are formalized, really getting together and hammering out the details of what development is going to look like. There's still some unknowns, especially about the future of the PGE property. There's going to need to be discussions on what the priority infrastructure projects are and what the alignments for roadway and trail systems should be. Again, then entering into development agreements. That's going to be based on what's established in that master plan. And then again, the city will then fund and build priority projects. These are projects that are going to be key to making this development successful. And so the city should be coordinating with property owners to determine roadway and trail alignments, public space allocations, and other investments. And the city should continue maintaining its role on convening and coordinating stakeholders. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Darren, do we have anyone
May I
with
ask
comments?
a question?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Kate Brown. My question is the dock. Is that the dock that is basically at the base of the historic City Hall, right
Yes.
at the Belgravia site? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Darren, are there any other comments?
Yeah, I had a question. So you talk about immediate wins, and the one that Kate just brought up about the dock down there. The other one being adding some park space to near the historic center. Are these things that would affect our plan as it relates to the CFEC direct status that we're looking to get? I guess that question's open to anyone who's qualified to answer it.
Probably Adrian.
Yeah, I don't believe it does. No.
Okay, so we could just go ahead with those projects, and that wouldn't interfere with. Okay. The other question that I had was related to something that you saw about a comment you made about a lower continuous road. So is that already part of the plan or not? I didn't see it in there. So if you start at one end, is there a road that's going to take you all the way to the other end? Is that part of the plan?
I'm happy to answer that one too. It is included as very conceptual in the vision plan, and the reason it's so conceptual is there's obviously it goes through private property, including the current PGE land, and would be sort of subject to a separate process to define its alignment and how it relates to that site. We have more definition around the historic City Hall district and less definition in this cultural heritage district.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Patrick?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and Darren's just sharing that on the screen.
It looks like Britta has a question.
Hi, yeah. I hope my mic is working and people can hear me again. In the early wins section, the funding that you have outlined there, is that funding that you see as already secured, or would that have to be addressed in future city budgeting processes? And I guess second concern with that, or question about that, really is the first early win there, coming up with a space near historic City Hall that can welcome people in. I'd really encourage that to include partnership with the tenant, with the coalition that I represent, as we're actively working on and developing and already inviting people into that building in that space. So I'd love to see that get kind of elevated to have a stronger partnership there, so that we can help move this forward and move it forward on a proper path. And then as far as funding is going, we've worked with the Parks Department in Westland pretty closely to develop this building. And I'd love to know the certainty of any funding in that department's budget to help with anything like that, because my understanding is it's not as robust as it could be.
Yeah, Jennifer, maybe I could help answer that. So I think the short answer is the assumption is that would come out of existing Parks Department funding, but because the project itself isn't really defined, it's more of a concept of create some temporary interim something. Could be a very light touch plaza or some gathering space that just gets citizens down onto the site where they can kind of see the future a little. That it's not a big budget item, but the assumption is that it's coming out of existing city parks resources. And I would, second you on the partnership idea. That's absolutely an idea, and it should be done in partnership.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's what I was just going to say too. If we pursue something like that, it would definitely be in collaboration with the property owners and the coalition and everybody engaged in this process.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
This is Kate Brown again. Darren, based on your comment, I'm assuming there hasn't been any sort of agreement or concession by the owner that there would be this space on the site. Has that conversation happened?
No, not yet, Kate. Again, this is the roadmap to recommendations on how to implement the vision plan. So yeah, once we get through this memo and then hopefully get the vision plan adopted, then we'll move on to the second phase of implementation and move forward with those conversations at that point.
All right, and then thank you. Just a comment on the dock. I'm fairly agile, and I really struggled to get down there when I went down a few months ago. I think it's a great space. If it could be more functional for people, that would be fabulous. I think that's a really easy win.
Okay. So are there any more questions on this topic?
Britta's hand is up, but maybe it's just left up from before.
Yeah, sorry, just left it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for that presentation and then the comments and discussion afterwards. If there's nothing further, I would move to number 6, the recommendations on the final waterfront vision plan.
All right, I'll give a quick synopsis of this agenda item. So
Okay.
what we're hoping to get from the working group is a consensus on a recommendation to City Council on whether to move the vision plan forward towards adoption, or if you have any changes you would like to recommend to the plan or the City Council, that we can get those from you today and document those for the council to consider. So really looking for, your discussion around the positives that you see in the plan, anything that you would potentially like to see changed. Jim already addressed some of that earlier. Yeah, and then just have a conversation amongst yourselves, and hopefully James can facilitate you to a consensus on a recommendation. And I'll leave it at that and let James take it from there.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. My point of view, and this is just my point of view, is I say we move this towards the City Council because a lot of the things that Adrienne and Jennifer discussed just moments ago, kind of hinge on that with, getting some of those early wins. But like I said, that's my opinion and my view. And I'm sure there's other comments and questions out there from everybody else. So let's open that up. If you could raise your hand, and then Darren, if you could call on them as they raise their hand, that would be great.
All right, Bob's got his hand raised.
Thank you. Appreciate it. When we began, I'm a social entrepreneur, which means I work not just to create economic value, but also social, environmental value is where we work. I worked 12 years for a coalition of churches that was advocating for affordable housing. I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a critical issue. I'm not sure it's addressed in the plan. That's the first comment. The second one is positive, where I think Linn Consulting is going to be making a recommendation for these public-private partnerships. I think it's essential to move the project forward in a phased approach. But when we began this process, I spoke of the importance of educating the public on the smart growth development strategies and how beneficial they would be to not just to the community, but the entire waterfront district. Uh, this is almost a quintessential smart growth development project, this whole district, looking at it as one parcel. It has sensitive habitat, wetland contaminated areas. It's an ideal candidate for implementing them. For those that don't know in a snapshot, what a smart growth development strategy is, it's building compact, high value projects so you can maximize areas for conservation areas, open areas, and recreation. And what I was told early on at that meeting by the consultants was we don't want to favor one development strategy over the other, and I thought that was odd, but and we let it go until we had our meeting last week. We recognize that you're finalizing this plan, and so. And although I was informed there was no intention to favor one development strategy over the other, the creation of the 3 districts does in fact do just that. And we object to the creation of the 3 districts. I can go on, but I think what I'll do instead is I'll put what our objections are in writing, and just end with the conclusion that I believe that the substantial funding and designation granted, particularly to the island, and the plan that creates separate districts, while my property, which is a southern linchpin and anchor for the whole district, remains unsupported and isolated by a special vague future use designation. It in effect devalues my project, and I feel that's unequitable and it should be addressed in the final vision plan. And I urge you to reconsider the plan to ensure fair treatment, just not to my property, but other property owners that are not part of that island. And that the plan formally supports smart growth development initiatives across the entire waterfront district, just as I advocated for the beginning as one district, not separate and distinct districts. That creates an unlevel and unfair playing field for the rest of us that have lived in the community, by the way, for 25 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Bob. Darren, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Britta.
Yeah, thanks. I think Jim earlier and Bob raised some really valid concerns. I've heard some feedback from community members about just not feeling that their voice has been heard enough in this. And I know this has been a very long process for the city of West Linn, starting years ago and kind of restarting with this current working group. And I don't know that we have time to address that we don't have time to address that in this meeting, but I think that's something we should really consider when moving this forward, is that in the grand scheme of things, to only have 200 or so comments and survey responses from a town with 25,000 people, and to have a few voices that are maybe small but loud, airing some valid concerns, I think that should make us all pause a little bit and think, okay, is this the right time to move this forward? I think we've also had some developments, particularly the closing of the mill that has happened since this working group came together and since this vision was developed, that I think this vision plan has a lot going for it. I think there's a lot of great ideas, and it's probably the overarching goal is very positive and reflects what West Linn and the broader kind of Willamette Valley community would like to see here. But I think there's the potential for more detail and more input, more people being heard, that would be really beneficial here. So I know there's still kind of time for that. We could push this to council and they'll either adopt it or not. And there's still time for public comments in that process. But I just wanted that to be food for thought because I think there are some community members and potentially even some working group members that are not feeling that this is the most representative product that we could be pushing forward.
Okay, thank you, Britta. Darren, are there any other hands up?
Yes, Martha.
Okay, go ahead, Martha.
Hello, everybody. So this is only the second meeting I've gotten to participate in on behalf of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ron, and I'm really here for staff support. But I do just want to clarify for the record that John George, Councilmember John George, is the official representative on this working group, and so for today's purposes, I'm not authorized to cast a vote. So I just want to clarify for the record that any votes that are taken, I'll be able to brief Councilman George afterwards, but we won't have an official vote from the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ron.
Okay, thank you, Martha.
All right, Patrick.
Yeah, so a couple of follow-up comments and then another clarification. So Bob had mentioned affordable housing, and this was brought up early on, and I don't know that that's been addressed, but I do agree that it is important in this project because I know in the city of West Linn, we're at a deficit in trying to provide affordable housing generally for state requirements. This could be a part of that solution. The comment, Britta, that you made about getting additional input, and I think it's great, as much input as we could get, but I have to be honest, I've never been involved in any community I've ever lived in where we've had more opportunity to provide feedback. I know at the neighborhood association, the Bolton Neighborhood Association, Darren and predecessors before coming in anytime we wanted to provide more feedback. So I sometimes think that the reason we're not getting feedback is that people just don't either want to get involved or they have other priorities. My last comment really, and this I'm just trying to get my brain wrapped around it a little bit, has to do with access to this area. So right now, it seems like the primary access would be right there by Historic City Hall and some modifications made to that area. And I guess by some magical way, we could come up with a solution because it's such a quagmire there already that would be accommodating. But does the plan include like multiple different access areas along like Willamette Falls Drive to get down there that are not down there now? So those are my comments.
Okay,
All right.
looks like
Those are
Jim.
Yep.
Jim
those are
had his
comments.
hand up next.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
Well, first of all, let me compliment the Darren and the consulting team because the current version of the plan is so much more comprehensive than the original version of the plan, and it deals with a lot of subjects that were missed in the first iteration. But I do think that that the reuse of buildings and other structures is not dealt with as directly in the plan as I would like to see it. There's some references to reusing materials or site adaptation, but it's not very specific to the encouragement of saving some of the buildings and the seawall, for example. And those are some of those are masonry or concrete or stone structures and buildings that are so rare, especially on the West Coast. And I think the plan needs to have more emphasis on saving some of those.
All right, Councilor Baumgartner was next.
Okay,
I saw
go ahead,
Britta's
Councilman.
hand. I saw Britta's hand up, actually.
I'm so sorry. I keep leaving that up.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I appreciate so much everyone's input. And as a decider on the eventual, process, I appreciate what I'm hearing is concerns that we're at a kind of a important junction, and there seems to be concern that we're going to go off in a wrong direction somehow. But I think that we'll have plenty of time and opportunity to get more engagement. And I hear all the concerns, and I'm listening very carefully about the concerns of preserving heritage, industrial heritage, access, and including all the people who want to be included in this project. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that I am listening as a person on council. I don't represent all of council, but I just wanted everyone to understand that. And thank you for your input.
Well, thank you, Councilperson Baumgartner. I do appreciate that because I do hear a lot of stakeholders and a lot of different and varied opinions in this comment. And I do agree that, especially with Jim, with some of the historic buildings, of preserving those, because, that's my passion. But as a waterfront vision plan that would then move to council, who actually will make these decisions, or some of the organizations that council has given, like HRB, which I'm a part of, or planning, which Tom is part of, those decisions will be made in front of those groups. I would recommend that we would adopt the Waterfront Vision Plan and move this to council so we can further this discussion on these topics that we all are very passionate about.
All right, James, Greg Smith has his hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I too am really kind of pleased with the way that the plan has evolved over time. I think it's thoughtful. I think it really kind of represents, as I kind of skim through the comments from the surveys, a large number of our fellow residents who did participate in that process are in favor of the ideas that are presented here. I share the concerns about access. I think it's particularly with the historic City Hall area, the road situation there is so tricky. I don't know whether we've really kind of completely grasped that particular issue, as well as just the difficulty of actually getting down to the lowlands, like where the ponds are right now, given the steepness of that grade off of Willamette Falls Drive. So I think that just the access questions continue to kind of worry me, but it would not stop me from wanting to support going forward with this plan and presenting it to the City Council. One small suggestion is that when I look for the appendices that are part of the final plan that kind of look at issues tied into floodplain and liquefaction, they're not available. So in whatever goes out to the public and to planners, I'm hoping that those appendices are clearly included. So thank you, and thank you for work, Darren and the consulting team. I'm impressed with what's come out of this.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
I
thank
think
you, Greg. Oh, go
sorry, I
ahead.
think Bob had another comment, maybe?
Oh, yeah, this is in reference to the comment about preserving the more of the historical buildings on the island. Of course, by using a smart growth development strategy where they build high value compact new buildings, that can lead to the preservation of some of those buildings, perhaps because they're building higher value on a more compact area of that island. I think it's 13 acres or something like that. So that's another reason why a smart growth development strategy should be implemented across the whole district. It will preserve open space. It will preserve recreational areas. It can preserve historic buildings, and it can create these conservation areas.
Okay, thank you, Bob. You know, Darren, per Greg's comments, and I would like to add to that, per Jim's early comments on you summarized some of those letters and things. Those should be in full included in the package to council and to anyone that wants to see it. Actually, that would be my only comment on that.
All right, yes, and we can make sure that those get bundled together and available on the project webpage, and then get it out to the working group also as to any other decision-making bodies.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to propose that we adopt this final waterfront vision plan and send this to council where it can continue to be worked on.
I'll second that if we're at that point.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so the intent wasn't necessarily have to take a vote, or finding consensus that people are comfortable, the group is comfortable, moving it forward. Take a vote if we need to, but hopefully we can find a consensus that move it forward with maybe some suggested changes, or move it forward as it is.
Well,
Again, I'll stop talking and let James take it from here.
yeah, I think we do have some consensus, but we do have some comments that were added to the record today that should be, they'll go into the notes, obviously, meeting notes, and then that will be part of the package that goes to council. I don't know how to show we have a consensus without a vote, and if we don't need a vote, then I don't know if we need a consensus, to be honest. But I think this group as a whole, I heard some comments of things that they would like to see added, and I'm good with that. I haven't heard of anything that is truly negative that would hold this back from going to council.
I mean, this is Britta here, if I may make another comment. I feel like if we're going to move this to council, we should definitely have all of the comments. And there were a lot of things directly from working group members today that we'd like to see added or adjusted in this final plan. And I think those desires definitely need to go to council as part of, future amendments to this plan. And I also think it'd be great for council to know who was here at this last meeting. To not have Grand Ron's voice or vote in this, I think, is concerning as well. So I don't know who else is potentially missing today. I don't have the whole working group list memorized, but I think that's an important voice that's not being heard today. So we should let council know that was the case when this gets presented to them.
So James, this is Darren. I'm willing to try to summarize the notes I've been taking here with some of the sort of the main comments that have been made. Let the group respond to me whether or not I've captured everything.
Okay.
So I
And
had,
you,
oh, sorry.
and this is
So
being recorded too, if you wanted to go back through it and make sure you picked up everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. But what I've got is, maybe some addressing affordable housing in the plan, directly addressing it was one of them. Bob brought up smart growth development, formally supporting that concept. Let's see, need for more input as this continues to move forward towards zoning codes, design standards, and implementation of the vision plan. Let's see. Access, again, access has been mentioned several times. So making sure to address how the access is going to work. Reuse of structures, not strong enough in the plan, so make sure that that gets pushed forward to council. Let's see. Yep. So those are the main points that I've heard folks make today around the vision plan.
Okay. All right. And to Berta's point, that would be very important for those to be added to the presentation to council.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess with those added, do we have consensus? Do we have any other concerns about sending this to council?
Well, I object to it in its present form.
And who was this? Sorry.
That was Bob. And Bob,
Yes, Bob.
Bob. Okay.
Can you
Okay.
clarify why the objection so we can make sure council we get that to
Sure.
council?
Sure. Well, the inclusion of across the district in support of smart development strategies is, I think, a good step in the right direction, particularly for properties like mine, in which the final use is vague. It can be left open to any interpretation. It could be designated as a park. That has profound negative implications devaluing my project. Someone already went on Google Earth and labeled my property on phase 2 a park. It's a contaminated sludge pond with 200,000 cubic yards of sludge, zoned GI. So the creating 3 districts isolates our district and puts us on an unlevel playing field with other districts, and particularly the island, which just received tens of millions of dollars of funding, and they have very favorable designation as opposed to ours, which is a kind of left on an island. For us to battle as a 25-year-old resident, a small developer, to have to advocate for smart growth development projects that also not only maximize areas for conservation and open air, but for affordable housing, conservation of some of the historic districts. And that's not fair. That is not fair. So we object to this going to council. We ask for that there are not 3 special districts created, because it does favor the development strategies, and the development strategies it favors are those that are well connected and have lots of money. The ones who are at a disadvantage are people like me that own land, that are small developers that don't have a lot of money, and that's just not fair.
Hey, James, it looks like Jim has another comment. Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
well,
And wait 1 second before Jim, sorry. Darren, you've got Bob's comments down, correct?
Yes, I've
Yes.
got Bob's reason for objecting to the vision plan.
Okay. Just want to make sure. All right, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
well, I support the approval by the working group based on Darren's proposed additions.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, with the comments that Britta had made and the list of items that we're going to add, and then the objection by Bob, I still think we should move this, adopt this, and move this forward to the city council, so this project can continue to move forward. And it sounds like we have a consensus of that with the group, with one objection.
James, you've got one more comment from Martha.
Okay.
Hey
Martha, go
everybody,
ahead.
I just want to make sure that the comments that are reflected back, what I had shared, that I mean the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde may very well support moving the plan forward, but are not in a position to do so today. So I just want to make sure that is clear for the record, and that a continued conversation can happen on that issue.
So I'm confused at what issue then, Martha? You're not available
I
to
believe
make a decision today, but
right.
in the
So when you
past,
do share that it's going to be a consensus, I think you should be really clear about what consensus means. And when I said that the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde were not in a position to vote today to advance it, just make sure that that is something that's conveyed to council.
right.
And again, if there's an
Right.
opportunity to do so in that time, it hasn't been reflected in the comments thus far.
Okay. All right. I get you. And just to be clear, this isn't a voting. As Darren said earlier, we don't need a vote on this to move this to council. So we will put in the comments that you were on the call, but the rest of your team was not at this point.
And I just want to clarify that at least when working with tribes, there's a big distinction between a council member and a consultant. And so just very clear that the official representative is tribal council member John George. And we will make sure that he's fully briefed. But I just don't want this moving forward in a way that makes it sound like the tribe has voted to move forward.
Not a problem. Okay, so Darren, what else is needed at this point?
Well, it sounds like there's no further objections to a consensus to move this forward outside of Bob and then Martha's comments about not having a position at this point in time. Unless anyone else has a comment. Well, Britta's back.
Yeah, sorry. I guess just question, like, yes, we want to present this to council, but is this presenting to council from this working group with the recommendation that it is approved? Or is this just a, hey, here's what we have up to this point presentation? I think that would help clarify.
So I guess that's up to the group how you want us to present this moving forward.
I would say this is what we've got to this point with these, I don't know, 6 to 8 things that were listed down by Britta, and then the objection by Bob. Because if this isn't a voting group where our final recommendations isn't voted on that everybody or the majority agrees, then this is a meeting with council or a presentation with council of saying this is what we've got.
Patrick?
Hey, this is just a quick question for Mary. Being on city council, what are your feelings about receiving it in either one of these, with either one of these approaches, as a voting recommendation, or just as a here's what we got to now? what seems most reasonable to you on the receiving end of this?
Oh, just speaking for myself, not anyone else on council, I can say that this is an important input that the working group has put together, and coming out of this working group, the expressed wishes of what to include and what to change, or what individuals are expressing needs to be clarified going forward to adoption, I think is helpful and valuable and will be listened to. So I guess it's, from what I'm understanding, there isn't a need to be coming out of the working group with, the working group all has come to a consensus that this should be approved. That isn't necessary to move the recommendations forward. The recommendations, I believe, aren't all saying, one conclusion. There's a variety of input that I'm hearing, and that other council will then have an opportunity to hear. But until it gets out of this format, nobody else on council is, I mean, of course they can listen to these meetings, but that is, I think, the purpose of moving it forward to council, is so that we can then be convening together to move to the next step and have the potential for adopting these requested changes. Does that answer your question, Patrick?
Yes, I think it's a great response.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is my belief also, as far as what the next step is to move this in front of council so some actual decisions can be made.
All right, Martha has another comment.
Okay, go Martha.
Oh, you're muted, Martha.
Okay, yeah. That was just an old hand up, so I don't have any more comments. Thank you, Darren.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. All right, so at this point, it sounds like Jim's got his hand up.
Just a point of clarification, does this go to the planning commission or directly to the city council?
So we are going to take it to the planning commission for their review and feedback. So all of this will be given to them, but ultimately council is the decision maker on whether to adopt it. We're not doing it as a land use action. It will just be done by resolution. And then that will set the vision for the next phase of work on implementing the vision through zoning codes and some of the actions that were outlined by Jennifer in her presentation. All right, so it's 2:27. So I guess what I'm hearing from the group is you're comfortable pushing this forward with the items listed for recommendations, Bob's objection, and of course the Grand Ron's position that they did not take a position today.
Yes.
Okay, if there's no other comments, then I think you can move on, James, to the final couple of agenda items.
All right. So item number 8 is public comment. Anybody else have any more public comment?
We did not have anybody sign up for public comment for today.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us to item number 9, which is adjournment. If there's no other comments, we will adjourn at 14:28. 2:28.
All right. Thanks everybody for your time and commitment to this
Thanks.
group. It's
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciated.
Thank you.
We'll get the comments out to you and copy you on all correspondences to Planning Commission and Council moving forward.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
well,
you
thank
all.
you, Darren.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.